One of my earliest videos discussed a sovereign citizen getting shot in Dothan, Alabama. I think it's pronounced Dothan. It might be Dothan. I'm not sure. At any rate, it's a very sad story about what happened. It all started over a man trying to take a dog to the pound. It ended up with him being dead, shot by a police officer after she pressed her service revolver into the man's stomach and fired. Well, I'm not sure if it was a revolver, but that's a small consequence. This event teaches us some lessons about what can happen in a stop and may have some relevance into the shooting of Rayshard Brooks and the shootings by Kyle Rittenhouse. Hello out there. I am trying to get through.
With his powerful brainwaves cradled in the warmth of reasoning, it's time for Johnnie Walker Dread to straighten you out on a thing or two. Emanating all the way from exciting Las Vegas, Oklahoma, it's the Johnnie Walker Dread Show.
There is this man named Lawrence who is out with his family and he finds a dog in the Walmart parking lot. So he picks up the dog and decides to take it to the pound. While he's in there, they ask for his driver's license. And he told them, I don't have to give you my driver's license. What? I'm just giving you this dog. Look, take the dog. Now, admittedly, he could be taking his own dog to the pound, one that he's gotten tired of or something like that. So I can understand why they may want to have his driver's license. But he says, I'm not going to give you my driver's license, so I'm just going to take the dog and be on my way. They won't let him leave. So he has to give his driver's license to the lady or he has to stay there. And he decides, I'm not going to stick around here. I'm getting in my car and leaving. Well, it turns out that there is a police officer stationed at the animal shelter. Now, why a police officer would need to be stationed at the animal shelter, I don't know. It doesn't look like a very high-risk job. But at any rate, he tries to get back to his car. She won't let him. And he starts getting a little bit angry and testy, and so she calls backup. And so another police officer is going to arrive on the scene, and it kind of looks like they might have had some experience with each other before. So let's go ahead and watch. And I will say that this is kind of disturbing for some people. I mean, I can watch this stuff all day long. It doesn't bother me, but there are a lot of people who really might be bothered to see this. This is going to be a shooting of a person. It's an extraordinarily emotional and sad event.
Kimball.
Now, just a little bit of heads up here. He's told his wife, or actually I think it's his girlfriend, that to be on the lookout because this is going to get really good. So the guy is kind of looking for a little bit of a scuffle. He's a sovereign citizen. And so he thinks he's going to put together a real legal argument here or be a little bit resistant and essentially try to prove a point. And, of course, not a smart thing to do, and this is going to escalate terribly. But at any rate, he's not totally innocent in this. He is kind of belligerent. The police officer who won't let him leave is on the left. And, again, there's probably nothing that would stop him from just getting in his car and taking off. I doubt she would chase him. But at any rate, he's going to stick around because I think he's kind of looking forward to a little bit of a confrontation here.
Hey, don't even start. Stand over there in the car, and I'll be with you in a second.
So he says, don't even start. So again, I think that they've had run-ins before. He's a sovereign citizen. He's probably been pulled over a few times. He's given this officer probably a rough time. Probably didn't give him his driver's license there either. And so the police officer is like saying, I don't want to hear it. I've heard all this BS before. Step over there.
Well, that's not what he would do for me. You got him doing more than I could get him to do.
Well, that's because the police officer that you see walking up is pretty good size and has a commanding presence. I don't know how you interacted with that person. The bigger police officer is clearly very no-nonsense, and the sovereign citizen isn't going to try too much here.
Guy comes in. He wants to drop the dog off. He's in Geneva. I don't know if he's right. You can't drop the dog off.
Did I tell you to stand over there? You stand by the car where I tell you to, or you going to jail now.
Okay, so it escalates really quickly. Again, I would almost have to assume that this police officer and this guy's had a run-in before, so he knows that this sovereign citizen type is kind of try to test him a little bit, and he's not going to play his game. I actually don't think that this was really called for. I understand that he's probably frustrated with this person in their past experiences, but it seems to me like he just kind of took this to a level before it really needed to.
You can utilize it where I tell you to stand. Do you want to argue with me more? Turn around. Turn around. Turn around. Don't touch me. Don't touch.
I think this was uncalled for. He's going hands-on. I don't see any basis for this. But it's going to turn out that the bigger police officer is not going to be the one to do the damage.
Touch me! Don't touch me! Priscilla!
Talk about passive-aggressive. Don't touch me. Don't touch me. Classic sovereign citizen stuff. Also known for use by a lot of auditors.
Look at this! Can you get this? Look at this! Look at this! I am a peaceful inhabitant. Stop! Get off me! No. Get off me! You want to turn around? No, I'm not. Get off! No! No! Yes, it's unlawful retainer. No! Stop! Stop! No! 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 Stop! 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 Stop!
The police officer, the male there, is quite a bit bigger, and you can see how hard it is to detain somebody who just simply doesn't want to go along with it. A lot of the people have been criticizing the cops in the Jacob Blake shooting for basically losing control of the person. And it's the same thing with the case in Atlanta with Rayshard Brooks, where people are claiming, well, these police officers should have been able to handle him easily. It's not that easy. And this guy, this police officer, who's pretty good size, I'm thinking maybe 6'2", 240, is going to struggle to try to keep this person under control. The female police officer is of no help whatsoever, and that is a part of the problem.
No! Stop! 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 My children are called. You're hurting me. Stop! There ain't nothing happened. There ain't no crime been committed. You're unlawfully detaining me.
He says that there's no crime taking place. In my opinion, he may be right. I don't think that the officer's use of hands-on here was legal, because there was no reason for him to go hands-on if the person is just arguing with him. It's not going to matter, because the sovereign citizen's going to end up dead.
Stop! Look at what you're doing to my children! Stop!
It's okay. It's okay.
That's another ploy, and I urge everybody to understand that just because your kids are in attendance means nothing. Police are not going to treat you differently just because your kids are around. In fact, they can't. I mean, you can't just let people go just because their children aren't around. If anything, it's more of an impetus to take you under control, to demonstrate that having your kids around doesn't just allow you a get-out-of-jail-free card.
Go! Stop! Get off! Get off of me! Stop! 30 seconds. Do not touch me!
Come here, like
Stop! Stop!
Get out.
Stop!
Don't taser him.
Stay for that 30 seconds.
Don't taser him.
Stop! Get off!
Now, notice that the sovereign citizen here isn't assaulting the police officer. He's not fighting back. He's just not going along. And there the officer loses control. Again, as I said before, one of the reasons why I wanted to play this again is to show how difficult it is to control somebody who doesn't want to be controlled. The male officer there is much bigger than the white sovereign citizen dude, completely loses control of him. The sovereign citizen now is free. He's going to run around the car. The police officer has lost control of the situation. And right now is where the real problem is. So the dude's going to run behind the car right into the path of the female officer. At this point, she should be able to at least take him to the ground so that the other officer can help her detain him. She should try something. Look what happens.
Don't do it! Don't do it! Get in! Don't do it! Get it!
Walks right by her. There is no respect whatsoever for her presence. He just walks right by her as if she's not even there. And that's going to set up a little bit of a emotional stress inside her mind. Now she has the feeling that she's not really helping. And she knows that the other officer is thinking that she's really not helping. And I have a feeling that's going to play a role in what's going to happen next.
Do not do it! Stop! Stop! Stop!
Again, the female police officer is doing absolutely nothing here. It's essentially one guy trying to control him.
Stop! 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 Down! Stop! Stop! Stop!
Okay, and so this is where things are going to go south in a hurry. Okay, so we're picking back up where we were. We see the person on the far left there is described as an officer in one article. I'm not sure. It looks to me like just a worker at the shelter, but I'm not sure. But what she's going to do is grab a hold of his hand. And what he has done is he's grabbed a hold of the officer's taser. Now, the officer is not being hit by the taser. He's just got control of it. Let's watch. Okay, so right now, the taser is in his hand, and this person has got a hold of his hand and is pulling on it. Okay, right now, the police officer is going to pull out her gun, press it into his stomach, and shoot him dead. All the screaming, that's his wife and kids that were in the car watching. And he died in the hospital later. So there's a few points to make here. Is one, the sovereign citizen guy did not have a hold of her gun. He only had a hold of her taser. The other one is he wasn't shooting her with the taser. He just had a hold of it, and the hand that was holding the taser is being pulled by that other person. And so there was no way that he could have shot the officer in that situation. Now, if that person had let go, then he could have reasonably shot the officer with the taser, incapacitating her. Okay, so let's read a little bit. This is a story from AI.com. Actually, I think it's AL.com, Alabama.com. And let's go ahead and read this. The shooting took place on December 30, 2014. Despite public interest in the case, which was really not much because I don't think anybody here watching this video has even heard of this event, except for those who may have seen my earlier video on this. The dashcam video was not released to the public. I believe that in Alabama, dashcam videos are rarely ever released to the public, but that's another story. On July 25th, a federal magistrate found grounds for proceeding with the lawsuit against the officer who fired the fatal shot. So we're talking about a civil suit here. So let's go ahead and skip down. It says, in 2015, Dothan Police Department cleared their officer, Adrienne Woodruff, stating in reports that Lawrence had taken control of her taser and was an armed threat. But U.S. Magistrate Judge David Baker disagreed late last month, saying Lawrence did not flee and whether he ever had control of her taser is a matter for a jury to determine. Lawrence was not armed. In a close-up video, Lawrence can be seen grabbing the taser as it is being used like a cattle prod to shock him. So he's being shocked by the taser, and so while he's being shocked, he grabs a hold of it, which is probably a natural reflex. I think that if you're being shot by that thing, you would try to grab it. That doesn't excuse it, but I'm just saying is that it's hardly unusual for somebody to do that. A third officer was pulling on his arm. Again, I don't know if that was an officer. Sure, if that is an officer, she wasn't dressed like one. It is undisputed that Woodruff gave no warning before shooting Lawrence. So the officer never said, I'm going to shoot. She just pulled her gun out, pressed it in his stomach, and opened fire. The magistrate also reported that Woodruff admitted Lawrence did not threaten her physically nor verbally, but that his mannerisms and his getting in her face made her uncomfortable. Interesting. So that was the basis for her decision to shoot him in the stomach. The magistrate, in the recommendation to the federal judge, wrote that a jury could conclude that Lawrence did not pose a serious threat of harm to the officers to warrant the use of deadly force by Woodruff. Attorney Hank Sherrod, who represents Lawrence's family in the lawsuit, said Lawrence reached for the barrel of taser to stop the pain. The video makes clear she let go of the taser to shoot him. This guy did not have to die. Linton White, attorney for Dothan and for Woodruff, told AL.com? My God, I think it's AI.com this week that the video shows a reasonable threat as Lawrence grabbed for the taser. The law doesn't require a police officer to wait until his own weapon is used against him before he can use deadly force. Now, think about the situation in Atlanta with the shooting of Rayshard Brooks. And in that case, Rayshard has control of the police officer's weapon, the taser. He's running away, but he turns around and he fires it at the officer. So there is some similarities here in the fact that there's a taser involved and the person has control of it. Now, there are some differences, of course. One, this person was not escaping, was not fleeing. However, he never actually tried to shoot the officer with the taser. He just had his hand on it. Now, the next part talks about PTSD, about what this has done to the girlfriend and the kids. It's not pleasant reading. They are having a real tough time with it, but I don't believe it's relevant to what we're talking about here. There's a picture of the guy, well, for what that's worth. And then the officer is cleared. So, man killed by Dothan cop had a violent past. He has had some problems with domestic violence, okay? And so is that relevant? No. And in the case of much of what's going on in the Kenosha shootings, a lot of that's not going to be relevant either. Lawrence had been arrested for making a terrorist threat in 2013. In the wake of a custody battle, Lawrence had asked officials with the Department of Human Resources, "What if I do like the Dale County man?" This refers to an unrelated kidnapping and shooting. Yes, this is a veiled threat. You could also make the case that this is an actual direct threat. And yeah, that's against the law and bad thing to do, and really a dumb thing to do, since you asked the official from the Department of Human Resources. Nobody ever said the guy was bright. So his wife filed a petition for protection from abuse. So there is some violence in his past. He's kind of a jackass and belligerent. Yeah, you can sort of get the picture. The Houston County District Attorney in 2015 presented the shooting to a grand jury, which did not indict. State investigators also reviewed the shooting. After the grand jury, the district attorney declined to discuss the police review with the local paper. Officials did not release the video. In my opinion, if you're a district attorney, you need to discuss. You're a public servant, and this is of interest to the public. You need to come and disclose what went on here. But yeah. Okay, so I'll skip down here. The suspect gained control of the officer's taser, and it can be heard actively sparking on the video. Yes, you can hear that if you listen carefully, indicating he was likely holding the trigger down. And there's a review board that stated that the shooting was within policy. Now, there's some interesting things about him that's very classic sovereign citizen here. So let's go ahead and read this. Evidence in the lawsuit includes other recordings, such as the girlfriend's cell phone video and the calls to dispatch. They have not been released as far as I can tell. The original call from the shelter was to request help with a man who was being difficult, almost disorderly. Yeah, that sounds like sovereign citizens. The ensuing argument between Woodruff and Lawrence runs long. Woodruff called dispatch from outside and stayed on the phone. He doesn't have to have a driver's license to drive in the state of Alabama. How many cops have heard that one before? That's classic sovereign citizens. He doesn't have to do anything. He doesn't have to be detained. So this is what the guy is saying. Instead of a license, Lawrence gave her an affidavit of identity. The peculiar notarized document starts with, "My name is Robert Lawrence of the Lawrence family." Okay, there's a lot that goes into that. It included an address in Slocum, his physical description, his birth date in 1984, a photo, a thumbprint, and his understanding that false information on this document could lead to imprisonment. This document is almost certainly either made by himself or by somebody who sold it to him as part of a package. And what they do is they take these documents and they go down and have them notarized. And they have this false sense that notarizing something somehow makes it legit. They get it notarized and then they send it to the Secretary of State with the understanding that if the Secretary of State doesn't return it back or make comment on it, then the Secretary of State has accepted it. And so we hear this a lot when sovereign citizens gets pulled over and they say, all this has been registered with the Secretary of State. But all that means is that they just mailed it and they haven't received any information back. And of course, the Secretary of State probably just throws it in the trash. And of course, a lot of them will have in the bottom of the document statements to the effect that if you do not respond to this document, that can only be interpreted that you're accepting it. Of course, putting something like that in a document doesn't mean anything. His identity checked out, no warrants. He's 1092, he's negative. I'm not sure what that means. I'm not a police officer. Woodruff refused to return his affidavit. He waited on his paperwork. Well, the affidavit is probably going to be considered evidence, so there's a reason why she would not give it back. And then things turned personal. She asked, "You know how foolish you sound?" "Oh, no." And then, "You're so smart, you've got half the teeth in your mouth." She told him, "You've got poor hygiene." Later, "I can see you're a very wealthy man." Yeah, there's no call for this. None of this is going to help at all. And she needs to understand that, how to interact with these people. That's not going to do anything. Keep in mind that sovereign citizens don't always hate the police. In fact, there's a certain segment of the sovereign citizen movement that has a lot of deep respect for the police. But this is how you lose that respect really quickly. The sovereign citizens, their view on the police is that they are code enforcers and don't realize that it's not supposed to be their job. Of course, that's incorrect, but whatever. She called in his tag. It checked out, which is kind of odd. He tried to leave. "Ma'am, I'm requesting my paperwork," she said. "I'm waiting for you to produce a driver's license." He again said, "I don't have to produce a driver's license." You know what? I'm starting to think that he's kind of right about that. So you take a dog to the pound. What's the law saying that you have to produce a driver's license just because you try to take a dog to a pound? I'm not sure, but he might be on solid ground there. Now, does she have probable cause to prevent him from leaving because she thinks that he doesn't have a driver's license? I don't think so. But this also explains why he didn't leave. He was wanting his paperwork back. He probably paid $40 for it. At that point, once she checked his identity and his car tag, according to the federal magistrate, there is question as to whether Woodruff had legal grounds to continue to detain Lawrence. Yeah, I have a question about that as well. He's not suspected of a crime. What crime is there in taking a dog to the pound? So, yeah, that's a little iffy. In an objection to the magistrate's report filed this week, the attorney for Woodruff argues the stop was legal, that Lawrence didn't show a license and appeared to be preparing to drive. Well, guess what? I don't think that you can make a person show you his driver's license before he gets in a car, unless you have probable cause that he has committed a crime. So I don't know about that. Now, if the person appears drunk, or you have good reason to believe that he doesn't have a driver's license, then I could see maybe asking for it. But simply trying to take a dog to the pound and refusing to give your driver's license, I'm not sure that's probable cause. But more importantly, White writes that the magistrate failed to see the threat through the eyes of an officer in a physical struggle who had lost control of a dangerous weapon. Okay. The report sees the threat faced by Sergeant Woodruff from the comfort and safety of chambers, fearful of nothing more threatening than the occasional paper cut as the magistrate views a cold record accounting of events, reads the objection filed Wednesday on behalf of Woodruff. Okay, so they're making a claim that, she felt threatened and you're just not getting it. You weren't there. You weren't in her shoes. Okay, I get that. Now, but this person is in the situation of a 17-year-old kid being chased by people. What would we think if we were 17? And I don't want to hear any crap that, however, that you would handle it because you were 7 foot, 280 pounds at 17 years old. If you're 17 and you're being chased by a maniac, and there's no doubt he's a maniac, what would you be feeling? Would you be fearful? At 17? Yeah, I would have. Yeah, no doubt. Oh wait, I'm sorry, I forgot. I gotta change that. I would have kicked his ass because I was a big brute. I gotta learn how to do the online internet thing. When Officer Alan Rhodes pulled up, he immediately got Lawrence to stand back so he could confer with Woodruff. You got him doing more than I could get him to do. Yeah, we heard that. But Lawrence wouldn't stand still and kept arguing. I don't know about you, but I'm not certain if that is illegal. Rhodes decided to take him to jail. He grabbed Lawrence. By the way, going back on that, if the person is arguing is interrupting some police officer from being able to question a witness, then that could probably be considered obstruction. Here, I don't believe it was obstruction at all. I think he was just got tired of listening to his BS. He grabbed Lawrence. This is unlawful detainer, cried Lawrence. I think he might be right. And usually, most of the time, 99.99999% of the time, when sovereign citizens say that, they're actually not correct. However, I think this case, he might have been right. Yelling, no, stop, my children are in the car. Yeah, we heard all that. Ain't no crime been committed. Well, it's not so much as has a crime been committed. Is there a reasonable suspicion that you might have committed a crime? But I don't think so. I don't see it here. At one point, Lawrence wriggled free and raced around his car. Rhodes fired the taser at Lawrence, but the darts hit his coat. He's coming right at you. Take him down. You don't have to beat him up. You don't have to be able to single-handedly put the cuffs on him, but you can take him to the ground. And if you do that, we have another officer there that can help you. You did nothing. And that is the problem here. And I have a feeling that your inability to do something is what led you to pull the gun and shoot him in the stomach. Once the darts are deployed, a taser can be used in what is called a drive-stun mode. That means the weapon can be pressed against a subject to cause pain, but no longer can incapacitate someone. And that's really important here. So he's still got the taser. The darts have been deployed already, and he can press it against her and hurt her. However, the other person's grabbing hold of his hand and pulling away from him. At that point, in that point of time, there is nothing he could have done to hurt the officer. Now, again, you have to be kind of careful. That person could have let go, in which case he could have technically shocked her with the taser, but it wouldn't have incapacitated her. And that's kind of important because one of the arguments about shooting people who grab a hold of tasers is that they can use it to incapacitate the officer and therefore take his gun. Rhodes got him again, grabbed his arms from behind. Woodruff began to drive stun Lawrence. A third officer, Renee Skipper, moved in and grabbed Lawrence's arm. So I guess it was an officer. Interesting. Lawrence's girlfriend can be heard yelling, "Stop, stop." After the shot, as more police and paramedics arrived, an officer interviewed Rhodes. Rhodes said Woodruff told him Lawrence was a sovereign citizen. Yeah, that's pretty well a given now. Lawrence can still be heard groaning on the ground. "Please take the handcuffs off. I don't want to die." That's pretty sad. Now, I understand why the handcuffs are on. Okay, so I don't want to hear that. Okay, I get it. It's policy. But I think that he kind of felt that he was going to lose his life there. And that's very unfortunate. And then we listen to the sovereign citizens are listed by the Southern Poverty Law Center as fiercely anti-government. That's not always true, and fast-growing in numbers, with complicated legal beliefs about common law and the individual's innate standing as free men. And I don't give a damn what the Southern Poverty Law Center says about anything. Total clown show. And I have another video that demonstrates why I believe that. And I'm not even going to give the Southern Poverty Law Center the time of day on this. Just moments after the shooting, Rhodes, that's the large police officer, says at first he wasn't sure who had fired. Dogs can be heard barking off camera. I was just going to trip him up and put him on the ground, eventually until the other officers got here. Let me translate that for you. I was just going to trip him up until I got a real officer to show up to help me. Sorry, but you saw it. Rhodes wrote in his official report, I was keeping the suspect tied up and felt 2 or 3 electrical charges through my right side that were shot by your fellow officer. The suspect stopped struggling for a few moments. I asked him if he were done. He said no and began fighting again. A short time later, I heard a gunshot. I held the suspect until he stated she shot me. But the use of deadly force report by Officer Renee Skipper states, suspect armed himself with officer's taser and tried to use it on officers. I see no evidence of that, but okay. The incapacitation of the officer would have given the suspect opportunity to gain control of his firearm and escalate the situation of deadly force onto the other officers. This is very officer friendly here, but I get it. When pressed about the crime itself, Woodruff said Lawrence wouldn't show a license. Oh, the bastard. Oh my gosh. Is that your understanding of the law? Asked Sherrod during a deposition in August of 2017. Yes, she said. That just any time you want to make a citizen produce a driver's license, you can? He asked. Woodruff testified that she was afraid of Lawrence. I mean, you were afraid to try and arrest him? She answered, absolutely. So she waited on backup. There is your law enforcement hero personified. Afraid to arrest him, so she has to call backup. Keep in mind, it's not a big guy. He never threatened you by gestures? Asked Sherrod. He threatened to sue me already early on. Oh, wow, that's a serious threat. Man, that would make me be scared to arrest somebody when they threaten to sue you. Okay, you're not claiming that he was subject to arrest because he threatened to sue you, right? No, of course not. He never threatened your physical person, right? Correct. Then a couple of minutes later, you were scared, right? Yes. And then, but it's not a crime for a citizen to make you uncomfortable, right? No, but when they do, you take action. Oh, wow. Okay. Did you shoot him because you were afraid he might have a gun? Asked Sherrod. No, testified Woodruff. You already in fear of your life because you believed he was a sovereign citizen? Asked Sherrod. I felt there was a threat, a possible threat there. Woodruff was insured at the time of the shooting. The lawsuit late Wednesday was reassigned to a recent Trump appointee, U.S. District Judge Emily Marks. What difference does it make if it's a Trump appointee? As for excessive force, should the case reach trial, a jury would need to consider severity of the crime, threat to officers or others, and whether the suspect is resisting arrest or attempting to flee. In this case, both sides agree the underlying crime, if there was one, was minor. He did not flee. The key dispute is whether Lawrence was a threat, whether he tried to gain control of the taser, whether he reflexively grabbed for the barrel to stop being shocked, whether she let go of the taser to go grab her gun, whether a taser in drive stun mode is a dangerous enough weapon to justify deadly force. Woodruff ultimately testified that she shot Lawrence because he was trying to use the taser on Officer Rhodes, who was holding Lawrence. I was afraid that Officer Rhodes would be incapacitated, which would leave me alone with that big, bad, sovereign citizen Hulk that he was. This is what's happened to our police force. There are some other things to consider as well. Why haven't we heard about this case? If you remember, Rayshard Brooks, who was drunk inside his car, sleeping at a Wendy's drive-thru, attacked police officers, grabbed a taser from one of them, and tried to shoot him with it. The police officer opened fire and killed him. And it made national headlines. Riots ensued. But is this case really that much different? Robert Lawrence is not fleeing. He hasn't tried to shoot the police officer with the taser, although he might have if he'd had the opportunity. But he is pretty much held down by this bigger officer, while the other officer pulls out her gun and presses it into his stomach and just kills him. Nothing said. No riots. No national coverage. It's like nobody gives a damn about Robert Lawrence. So you begin to wonder, how much of this police brutality coverage is just driven by the media? Why is it that we have not heard about this case? Well, nobody's told us. They don't consider it newsworthy. And that's too bad. Like my video and subscribe to my channel.